Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shannon. How you doing? Nice to meet you. I hope you're doing so very well. Today I am bringing you a video that is going to be reacting to 1-star reviews of my favourite books of 2022. So if you're interested on my feelings getting a little bit hurt and maybe me being a little bit salty, then please stick around and enjoy.
She went away on Christmas Day, didn't come back till New Year.
The first book I'm going to be talking about is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Now, this is not the only Colleen Hoover that made my best of the books list for 2022, and I understand that Colleen Hoover, you fall into like two camps, you love or you hate, and I feel like I don't have enough experience with Colleen Hoover to fall into any camps because I've only read 2 books by this author, and the 2 books that I have read have been 5 stars this year and they've been on my favourites list. So I don't know, I don't feel like I've read enough from this author to fall into the love this author camp, but I also have given the 2 books I have read from her 5 stars. So it's a hard one, but I do know that people have hard opinions on some of Colleen Hoover's work, so this might be interesting. I'm going to be reading from my handy dandy iPad, so I will probably be looking down for the majority of this video, but we have a 1-star review that says, I don't believe in disliking things just because they are popular. I went into this with the intention of liking it, but ended up feeling uncomfortable by the tone of this book. Although wholeheartedly I respect the personal nature of the story, the author's note does not exempt this work of fiction from criticism, especially when it comes to a topic as serious as domestic abuse. I'm going to try and not spoil anything for these books. I'm going to try and pick reviews that don't have spoilers, just because everyone can enjoy this video that way. I empathise with the main character Lily and appreciate the effort that was made to highlight how trauma distorts and lingers, but I don't believe this captured the severity or nuance that a topic this heavy deserves in a fictionalised work. This book is marketed as romance, and the synopsis makes it seem like a light-hearted love triangle instead of a woman's experience with spousal abuse. I do agree with that. I would not categorise this book as romance. I think I would categorise this book as literary fiction, just because even though there is small amounts of romance that comes through in the story, it is definitely not a romance book. And the sequel, It Starts With Us, that also ended up on my best of the year for 2022, that was more of a romance than It Starts With Us, and I don't know why It Starts With Us is classed as a romance, because I don't think it is. So I agree with that. In comparison to Kate Elizabeth Russell's harrowing depiction of abuse in My Dark Vanessa, the tone of It Ends With Us feels acutely inappropriate. Now, this is hard because My Dark Vanessa is also one of my other favourite books. It is literary fiction, and it is dark when you read it, but it's written so well. So I can see why comparing these two would make It Ends With Us fall flat, but I also think comparing this two is not a fair comparison because they're totally different kinds of abuse. It Ends With Us deals with spousal abuse, and My Dark Vanessa deals with grooming and child abuse. So even though they both deal with traumatic situations about abuse, they're totally different. They're totally different aspects of abuse, if this makes any sense. So I find it hard to compare the two, but I do understand the levity that's in My Dark Vanessa is missing from It Ends With Us, and I think that's why it's marketed as a romance, because it should have been more, it should have more levity to it. It should feel more, less romance and more a look into something that's traumatic. So I don't know, it's a hard one. It reduces domestic abuse to a lover's quarrel and presents a tactless caricature of the realities of abuse. I can acknowledge this may not have been the intention, but the elaboration in the author's note does not absolve this book of its reckless and irresponsible marketing. Again, I agree, it should not be marketed as a romance. It Ends With Us has the bones of a powerful story but reads like a low-budget Hallmark movie pushed forward by ridiculous plot revelations. Hoover's attempt to make Ryle into a three-dimensional character completely flops. At first I thought the accelerated relationship between Ryle and Lily was meant to emphasize how witnessing abuse in early age might you less likely to spot red flags in others. However, it turns out Hoover was really trying to create a deep relationship between these two. Her use of naked truth to build the relationship was a lazy ploy to circumvent true development and simulated an unsatisfying and unearned intimacy. I also found the use of teenage diary entries in the form of letters to Ellen DeGeneres to have aged really badly and comes off as a corny device to tell rather than show readers about Lily's relationship with Atlas. I don't know, I kind of like the diary entries. I would have preferred them not to be like Dear Ellen DeGeneres. I would have just preferred a normal diary entry because it was a good way to bring Atlas and Lily's story into the present, and I liked that. I liked that it told me about their relationship because we were getting shown Ryle and Lily's relationship, so it makes sense to be told about her and Atlas' relationship. And even though I would agree with this if it was Lily and Atlas's love story and It Ends With Us, that being shown rather than being told would have been better, but because we were being shown a different relationship, it made sense in my brain that we'd be told about the past relationship she had with Atlas. So again, this worked for me. It's personal preference, so I understand, but I liked the entries. The single redeeming quality of this book is the empathy that Lily develops for her mother towards the end, but this moment, as well as the ending, lacks sufficient nuance. I wanted more discussion, I wanted more development, I wanted less telling and more showing. Although the message that the cycle of abuse ends with us is personal for Hoover, I feel like this depiction is reductive and makes it seem like walking away is a choice all women have. Hoover maintains that this book was meant to show that domestic abuse isn't black and white, but I don't think it achieved that at all. She made the conscious decision to pit romance and abuse against each other, package it with a pink cover and synopsis free of any mention of abuse, and marketed it to impressionable young adults. However well-intentioned this cathartic passion project was, its reception as a work of fiction is devout nuance. The white knight message of It Ends With Us completely undercut by the blatant romanticism of abuse. So I do agree that it shouldn't be targeted to young adult readers. I do agree that it should not be marketed as romance, and I do think there should be content warnings or something in the description or synopsis on the back of the book, wherever you're reading it, that there is abuse in this, because I do think going into this, I thought it was going to be a love triangle and it was going to be like dramatic and cute, and it went way harder than I thought it would. Again, I think that's why I liked it more, because it surprised me, but I also agree with this that the marketing should have been different. So like, even though I enjoyed this story and I liked this story for my own personal reasons, I do think the marketing should be completely different. So I do agree with most of what this reviewer is saying, because the marketing is wrong in this instance. We just have a few like incredibly predictable, highly overrated and full of characters and ridiculous moments I disliked. Fair. Now it's time for a naked book. This book sucks. Okay. What I didn't like, everything. What I liked, the ending. Just no. Changed my rating because Colleen Hoover is a piece of shit. See, like, I don't know enough about Colleen Hoover to know what kind of person she is. Like, that may be naive, but I picked up her books before like book talk became a thing. Like, I picked up It Ends With Us about 5-6 years ago, and like booktube raved about Colleen Hoover, and that was what I was exposed to, the good side. And now I feel like the more platforms there are, the more I hear not so great things, so I maybe need to look into this a bit more. Naked Truth. I'm just part of the minority that didn't like It Ends With Us, and I'm okay with that. You guys may have loved this, but honestly, I just didn't feel like I was reading a Colleen Hoover novel. The writing didn't seem the same, there was massive disconnection with the character, and the story was a little sloppy, all over the place and slightly problematic. I felt like Colleen wrote different chapters at different times just to put them in hopes of it working. One part of the book I did enjoy was the letters to Ellen. In fact, those were my favourite parts of this book, as they offered some detail behind the context that was Lily's life. It was a shame I didn't like her character and personality at all, but I applaud Colleen for giving us a different take on relationships. So, yeah, I mean, it's all just so personal, isn't it? Like, I really liked Lily as a character. And I do think that it was built up pretty well with what she experienced as a child, and then experiencing some similar things in her life and not being able, like, it felt realistic to me. I don't know, I'm obviously like speaking from how I thought, but it felt realistic to me. The making excuses, the trying to look at the bright side, there's a certain line in this book that says, like, after something happens, Lily says, like, I'm now a statistic. And for me, that hit home because, like, that's a thought that you can have if you've experienced something like this. And even though there is problems in this narrative, it's not a narrative about something this traumatic, something like abuse in general. It is going to be personal to the writer, to the character. Like, not every abusive relationship looks the same, and I feel like this was Lily's story. It doesn't have to be the same as someone else's story. It doesn't have to check off all the boxes of what, like, standard abuse would look like. You know, it's going to be personal to this character, and that came across for me. And yeah, I understand why people think this way, but I just think the total opposite. It felt realistic to me. It felt true to Lily's character and her past, and Ryle felt like a character to me. Like, I over the top at times, but he still felt like a character because I despised him, you know. And in order to pull that kind of emotion out of someone, the character has to be at least three-dimensional at most, because you can't despise, like, a 2D character because they're not fleshed out enough, in my opinion. I don't know. I guess I'm just, like, maybe in the minority of this one, maybe not, because, like, I feel like there's a lot of people who love and hate this book quite equally. I do think the minority sways to loving this book, but for me, I just really enjoyed this, and I have my own personal reasons for enjoying this. So yeah, I think this was a hit for me, and I understand why it's not a hit for other people, but I just don't agree. And that's cool, because we all have our own opinions, which is the way the world works. The next book I have here is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This was a 4-star. You might be wondering why I have 4.5 stars on my favourites list, and it's because I didn't hand out a lot of 5 stars this year, so I had to improvise with some of my favourite books that weren't quite 5-star. This was one of them. And the first review we have here says, do you all remember when we were super excited once we finished Home Before Dark and wanted Riley to publish a supernatural book? Yeah, right, yeah, so this isn't it. The worst supernatural book I've ever read in my life. Riley gets a second strike. And I mean, if you go into this book expecting supernatural, it may be a letdown, but I went into this book expecting it not to be supernatural, so was in for a really good surprise when it turned out to actually lean into that. So I think your experience would differ depending what you went into this book knowing. Officially done with Riley Sager for real this time. I don't know why I finished this. Couldn't finish it to the end, and the plot twist is absurd. Like, I suddenly felt like I read a different book than the chapters I read from before. Okay. One of my favourite thriller authors released this. Am I being prant? This is one of the worst books I've ever read. I was literally laughing out loud at the twists. They were so ridiculous. Absolutely 100% would not recommend. Again, I feel like it totally depends. It depends what you go in expecting, what you go in knowing. It depends what you're looking for. And I liked the over the top, like, twists at the end. Like, I liked that it went there. And for me, this kind of reminded me of watching one of those cheesy supernatural horror films, where you just know that it's not going to be the best, but you have a ball anyway. And for me, I went in not expecting supernatural, got a nice surprise, and was sitting there entertained through the whole thing. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I understand why people wouldn't enjoy it. And I knew this was going to have some mixed reviews, to say the least. But yeah, I liked it. Girl on the Train meets The Woman in the Window meets any paranormal story. Too much happening with no impact. A very misleading title too. Should have been called The Crazy Lake instead. Detailed review coming. Meh, I mean, what was that full stop? Listen to the audiobook, Riley. What the actual fuck was that? Nope, not even going to finish this one. What happened to Riley Sager, who wrote Lock Every Door and Home Before Dark? Who the actual fuck is this? Now, I feel like this, I really loved Home Before Dark. It's one of my favourites I've read from Riley Sager. It was a 5-star. I feel like the reason this book maybe didn't hit as hard as Home Before Dark is because I wish Home Before Dark went supernatural, and this book did. And it's like you can never win, to be honest, because people were screaming for him to do something supernatural after Home Before Dark, and when he has done it, it's people think it's flopped, whereas I think it hit. I liked it. I enjoyed it. This is quite the most ridiculous mystery thriller I've ever read. Yeah, well, if you go in expecting like Riley Sager's mystery thriller work, you're going to get a big surprise when you open the book and find that this is different from his other work, which I agree with. I do think this is different. The writing's different, and the plot twists, the build-up's different, but I liked that he done something different. I liked that it wasn't his standard mystery thriller, and I liked that he leaned into the supernatural for a change. So, I mean, everyone, each to their own, and if you go into this book expecting a mystery thriller, you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you go in expecting a cheesy supernatural thriller, then you're going to be highly entertained, I think. The final book I have here is Heartstopper Volume 1. I did put Heartstopper Volume 1 to 4 on my favourites for 2022, but I'm going to be reading 1-star reviews of the first volume just to make it easier and so not to spoil. I've literally heard nothing but good things about this, so it's going to be interesting to see people's thoughts that didn't enjoy it. How is everyone hyped over this? Been wanting to read a graphic novel for a while, and this one seemed short enough, so I thought, why not give it a go? This felt like I was reading fan fiction. The conversations were really dull. I found everything so predictable. No point in the story where I thought, I wonder where this is going. Probably would have liked this more if it wasn't a graphic novel and there was more depiction of characters and events. Don't come at me with your pitchforks. I don't really think this book was predictable as I thought it would be, but I think it's because I read 1 to 4 volumes back to back, and as the story goes on, there does get more nuance into the narrative. Charlie has some struggles, Nick has some struggles, and like their friend group start becoming more prevalent in the story. And I think if you didn't enjoy the first one, like maybe reading all 4 volumes back to back would give you what you were looking for, that you didn't get from the first book. It would give you more of the story. And I kind of just read them as a bind up, which I think made my enjoyment more. Nick and Charlie are written by a female author almost purely for the female gaze. This isn't a book I would connect with living, breathing, male identifying people. The art style is inconsistent at best, ugly at worst, and some of the facial expressions are downright horrifying. Imagine a Jeff the Killer smile and you're getting close. I wasn't invested, but the restricted colour palette was a smart choice and made the visuals slightly easier to look at. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the simplicity of the artwork, and I enjoyed the simplicity of the writing. It was telling you what was meant to be a quite simple story about 2 boys falling in love. It didn't have to be super intricate. Like it was what it was, it done what it done, and it got to the point, and I liked that. I could understand why you wouldn't like that, but maybe there is graphic novels or novels out there that are going to give you the deeper payoff that you're looking for. I can recommend many queer books if you need that, but like for me, this done what is said on the tin, essentially. And I should preface this by saying that I went into Heartstopper very hesitant because I didn't think I was going to like it. I was really worried because of all the hype, and I just didn't know how I was going to feel. I ended up really loving it, and that was a surprise to me considering how hesitant I was. But again, I think it's because I read them all back to back. Damn, this was bad. Sorry, it's more cringy than cute, and it really has no story, and the only thing they're doing is kissing each other. Not. Please do not come after me with your pitchforks. As I almost say on this channel, everyone is entitled to their own opinions and thoughts, so like I appreciate and respect anyone's thoughts if they appreciate and respect mine. It's the way the world works, you know. And it's books, you know. Everyone is going to have personal feelings towards what they read. Editing this review because I was being too nice to it. I hate this, 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 oh, da, 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 da. Like the simplicity of the story, I think it was meant to be simplified. And as you read more of the volumes, it gets deeper, and that changes the whole vibe of the first book. But if you're only going to read the first volume, you're probably not going to get the payoff of the deepness and the character growth of the rest of the series. Just my opinion. Anyway, that is me reacting to some 1-star reviews of my favourite reads of 2022. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these, your ratings, your thoughts. Remember to subscribe, like, hit the bell if you want to be notified for when I take out new videos. And that is all I have for you today. Remember to stay safe, happy and healthy, and I will see you next time. Bye.
She went away on Christmas Day, didn't come back till New Year. He thought everything had changed, but it was all